The November air was sharp and cold in the Appalachian foothills. Sarah Mitchell made her way down the narrow trail, her worn boots finding purchase on the rocky path. At 28, she'd walked these mountains her whole life, gathering herbs and plants she'd sell to the natural foods co-op in town. It wasn't much of a living, but it was hers. Her blonde hair, twisted into a practical braid, caught the afternoon light filtering through the bare trees. She wore a faded denim jacket over simple clothes, carrying a canvas bag with the day's harvest. The small cabin she rented was another hour's walk, and she wanted to get home before dark. Then she heard it. A sound that didn't belong, a groan, pained and desperate. Sarah stopped, listening. There it was again, coming from off the trail. She pushed through the brush carefully, her heart quickening. A man lay near the base of a rocky outcrop, clearly injured. He was in his mid-30s with dark hair and several days' worth of beard. His clothes, though torn and dirty now, looked expensive. Quality fabric, good boots. Blood seeped from a gash on his head, and the way he held his ribs suggested worse injuries beneath. "Sir, can you hear me?" Sarah knelt beside him, her hands already moving to assess the damage. Growing up poor in these mountains had taught her basic first aid out of necessity. The man's eyes opened, unfocused with pain. "Fell," he managed. "Climbing. Lost my grip." Sarah could see the cliff face above. He'd fallen at least 20 feet, maybe more. The fact that he was conscious at all was remarkable. "I need to get you help," Sarah said, already calculating. "No cell service up here. The nearest road was miles away. Can you move?" He tried to sit up and gasped, falling back. "Ribs. Broken, I think." Sarah made a decision. Her cabin was closer than town, and this man needed shelter soon. The temperature was dropping, and hypothermia was a real danger. "I'm going to help you up," she said firmly. "We're going to move slowly. My cabin isn't far. Once I get you there, I can go for help." "Why?" the man asked, his eyes searching her face. "You don't know me." "Because you're hurt, and it's getting cold," Sarah said simply. "That's reason enough." With considerable effort and no small amount of pain on his part, Sarah got the man to his feet. He leaned heavily on her as they made their way slowly through the woods. He was taller than her, stronger even injured, but he tried to bear as much of his own weight as he could. "What's your name?" Sarah asked, partly to keep him alert. "David," he said through gritted teeth. "David Chen. I'm Sarah. We're almost there. Just keep moving." The walk that normally took an hour stretched to nearly 3. By the time Sarah's small cabin came into view, both of them were exhausted. The place was modest. One room with a wood stove, a bed, a small table, and shelves lined with jars of dried herbs and preserves. Sarah helped David onto the bed, then immediately started a fire in the stove. "I need to look at your injuries properly. Is that okay?" David nodded, his face pale with pain and exhaustion. Sarah worked with gentle efficiency, cleaning the head wound, checking his ribs with careful hands. Nothing seemed life-threatening, but he needed proper medical care. "I'm going to walk to town," Sarah said, pulling a quilt over him. "There's a clinic. I'll bring back the doctor." "That's ours," David protested weakly. "In the dark." "I know these trails blindfolded," Sarah assured him. "I'll be fine. There's water in that pitcher, and the fire should keep you warm. Rest." Sarah set out immediately, pushing herself to move quickly despite her fatigue. The round trip to town and back with Dr. Morrison took most of the night. When they returned near dawn, David was feverish but stable. Dr. Morrison, who'd been treating mountain folks for 40 years, examined David thoroughly. 3 cracked ribs, mild concussion, various cuts and bruises. "He's lucky you found him, Sarah. Another few hours in this cold and we'd be having a different conversation." Over the next week, Sarah cared for David as he healed. He couldn't be moved safely yet, and she wouldn't hear of him staying anywhere else. She made him herbal teas for pain, cooked simple but nourishing meals, and changed his bandages twice daily. They talked during those quiet days. David was careful about what he revealed, but Sarah learned he'd come to the mountains seeking solitude after a difficult year. He'd been rock climbing alone, which he admitted was foolish. "Why do you live up here alone?" David asked one evening as they sat by the fire. Sarah shrugged. "I grew up in these mountains. My parents passed when I was 20. I never had much education or money for anything else. I gather plants, make remedies, sell what I can. It's not much, but it's peaceful. Don't you want more? More of what? Stress? Complications?" Sarah smiled. "I have what I need. The mountains provide if you know how to listen." David was quiet for a long time. "You saved my life." "You didn't have to." "Of course I did. What else would I have done? Left you there?" "Many people would have," David said softly. "More than you'd think." 2 weeks after the accident, David was well enough to leave. A car came for him, expensive, driven by a man in a suit who looked wildly out of place on the mountain road. David took Sarah's hands at the door. "Thank you. For everything. I won't forget this." "Just take care of yourself," Sarah said. "And maybe climb with a partner next time." He smiled, then grew serious. "I'd like to stay in touch, may I?" Sarah gave him her mailing address. She had no phone, no internet in the cabin. David wrote it down carefully, then left. 3 months passed. Sarah returned to her routine, though she often thought about the stranger she'd saved. Then a letter arrived, followed by another and another. David wrote about his life, his work, his thoughts. Sarah wrote back, sharing her own observations about the changing seasons, the plants she gathered, the quiet wisdom of mountain living. After 6 months, David returned. This time he arrived with a truck full of supplies. "What is all this?" Sarah asked, bewildered. "I need to tell you something," David said. "I wasn't completely honest with you. My full name is David Chen. I'm the CEO of Chen Technologies. I'm quite wealthy. Very wealthy, actually." Sarah stared at him. Chen Technologies, even she'd heard of it. One of the largest tech companies in the world. "When I fell," David continued, "I was running away from everything. The pressure, the constant demands, the people who only saw my money. Then you saved me. You cared for me, and you never once asked for anything. You didn't even know who I was." "It wouldn't have mattered," Sarah said honestly. "I know. That's why it means everything." David took a breath. "I've been thinking about what you said, about the mountains providing. You were right. They provided exactly what I needed, perspective. And you," Sarah's heart quickened. "David!" "I'm not asking you to leave here," he said quickly. "I'm asking if I can stay. Part-time at first, maybe more later. I can work remotely. I can learn about plants and herbs and this life you've built, if you'll teach me." Sarah looked at this man, this billionaire who'd found something in her simple mountain cabin that all his wealth couldn't buy. "I can't offer you much," she said quietly. "This cabin, this life, it's not luxury." "It's real," David replied. "That's more valuable than anything I own." Over time, David kept his word. He split his time between the mountain and the city, but increasingly, the cabin became his true home. He funded a proper clinic for the mountain communities, but insisted Sarah run the herbal medicine program. He bought the land around her cabin, then gave her the deed, protecting it from development forever. They married 2 years later in a simple ceremony with just Dr. Morrison and a few neighbors present. David's business associates were shocked when they eventually met Sarah, expecting someone polished and ambitious. Instead, they found a woman who spoke simply and honestly, who wasn't impressed by wealth, and who'd somehow given their driven CEO the peace he'd been searching for. Sarah never changed who she was. She still gathered herbs, still lived simply, still found her contentment in the rhythms of nature. But now she shared it with someone who finally understood that true wealth isn't counted in dollars. Years later, when interviewers would ask David about his success, he'd smile and say, "I fell off a mountain and a poor girl saved me. She taught me what actually matters. Everything else is just details." And Sarah, when asked about marrying a billionaire, would say simply, "I just saw a man who needed help. The rest didn't matter then, and it doesn't matter now." Because that's the truth about real love and genuine connection. It doesn't care about bank accounts or status. It only cares about seeing another person clearly, helping when they're in need, and recognizing what's valuable in the human heart. Sometimes the poorest person has the richest spirit. And sometimes saving someone's life means they end up saving yours right back.